Good day and welcome everyone to another Partner Connect session at the Festival for Change. We've got a great lineup today. We're going to start with Partners for a New Economy with Leslie Harroun, their director. I will bring her up onto the stage.
Good morning. And
hi, Leslie. How are you doing?
Good. Good morning. And thank you, Henry. And thank you for promoting economic pluralism, for putting on this festival. What a great idea it is. And I'm really pleased to be here this morning. So,
brilliant. Well, I will leave you to do a 5-minute summary, and then I'll come back and start taking questions, and then we can bring people onto the stage and so on. Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Great, thank you. So my name again is Leslie Harroun, and I'm the founding director of Partners for a New Economy. And my last day as founding director was actually last week. So now I'm a senior advisor, and my place has been taken by a woman named Jo Swinson. If you live in the UK, you might recognize her name. She used to be the leader of the Lib Dems in the UK. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Partners for a New Economy. I'm just going to give you the broad overview, and you can ask questions later if you want to. Partners for a New Economy is a donor collaborative that was founded by 4 international family foundations, the Oak, MAVA, Marisla, and KR Foundations, and they live in Europe and North America. And Partners combines donor fellowship with bold grant making. So we're grant makers. We give away money to organizations who we think are doing a great job at creating social change. And our goal, our mission, is to shape a new economic paradigm that values ecological integrity and human well-being. So our goal is really an economic system that prioritizes the long-term health of the biosphere as the planet as a central concern rather than as a discretionary consideration, which is what our economic system does today. So we're a little bit different in that we're not focused directly on policy change. We're focused on system change. So we want to change our economic system from the ground up. We want to change how people think about the economy and how the economy is structured. So what drives the economy today? What's its operating system? So we think about the purpose, the goals, and the outcomes. For example, what if we substituted this idea of GDP growth with prosperity for everyone and quality of life for everyone? Less stuff, more benefit. Who gets to decide what those goals are? And what are the roles and responsibilities of civil society, academia, and the public and private sectors in making sure those goals are met? So I'm sure everybody out there knows about Kate Raworth's donut. We're really focused on an economic system that looks like that donut and that ensures that no one falls short on the essentials that we all need to live, and that Earth's life supporting systems can continue to sustain us. What we know, and one of the reasons that we were founded in 2015, so about 5 years ago, is that there's a widespread and growing consensus that the economic system we have isn't working. And we're seeing more and more evidence, particularly since the 2008 financial crisis, that the underlying theory of our economic system has been disproven by evidence. So what we're seeing is that the theory and reality no longer align. And so we're a small foundation. We probably give away 3 to 4 million Swiss francs every year. We're based in Switzerland. We work in Switzerland and we work in Europe and North America. So we're small. kind of impact do we think we can have? And so where do we focus to have the most impact? So and how do we do it with a systems change lens? So it's really, it's a nasty problem. It's very complex and wicked. And so what we've decided to do is focus on what we think of as the bastions of power. So where within our economic system is the status quo really closely and jealously guarded by those who don't want anything to change? And where are those specific places where if we actually got to them, if we could poke them or use something to leverage them, where could we create deep change that had cascading impacts? So we focus on three specific areas. The first one is the underlying theory, values, and narratives of what we view as our outgoing political economic theory, neoclassical economics, or neoliberalism to some of you. And so we're not trying to stop anything from happening, but we are trying to evolve something new from emerging. So what we're trying to support is groups of people and organizations who are playing a strong role in generating a new moral and intellectual framework that prioritizes quality of life, human well-being, and environmental sustainability, and that puts in place ideas about which institutions within society, like government, for example, could play the most meaningful role in doing that. And also, how can we put markets in service to people rather than the other way around? One other place that we focus is on our money system. So central banks, who have an enormous amount of influence over our economic system, where the financial flows go, and who gets to make those decisions. And we also focus on large banks, who within our economic system have the ability to create money for the first time. They just create it out of nothing and they put it into the economy. This is very simplistic, but and where they put that money actually determines what our economy looks like, who gets funded, and what the markets will support. So if we can change where money goes when it's first created, or who gets to decide sort of the purpose and the underlying infrastructure of our banking system, then we can decide what a new economic system will look like. The third place that we focus is on enterprise. So the dominant enterprise model of our economic system today is the investor-owned, profit-maximizing company. And this model, unfortunately, is structurally indifferent to social and environmental impact, and it often leads companies, and particularly large companies, to focus almost exclusively on share price and profit, while the whole system and sectors unthinkingly harm ecosystems, communities, and employees. So our focus here is, how do you change the structure and the governance of these companies, and how do you change their role in society? Is their purpose really to first and foremost create profit that ends up creating wealth for only a certain number of individuals, and operates sort of outside the boundaries of the environment and creates environmental harm? Or do we actually want to create companies that are responsible to all of their stakeholders and then operate within planetary boundaries? So I will stop there. I've probably gone on more than 5 minutes, and I think you can ask questions now, or we will hear the other two speakers.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Leslie. Yeah, no, we thought we'd do Q&A immediately, and then move on to other partners. And okay. So hopefully people can put questions up. I've got a question to start with to get things rolling. I think it's really interesting how you say you're focused on systems change rather than policy change. And I wondered how that affected how you managed your grants, because we know systems change is uncertain, messy, exactly what you may or may not achieve, and there's, you know, things may change dramatically during the period of doing, you know, taking actions. You may learn and change. How do you build that into your grant giving approach?
It's not easy, and I won't say that we never focus on policy change, but really what we're trying to get to is the excuse me, is the cultural change. How people actually think about the economy, how they talk about it, what is the broader narrative around the economy. So one of the places that we focus, and you know this because we support you, is economics education. How do we actually make sure that young people and others who are interested in the economy and having careers in the economy, how do we teach them about what the economy is? And for the last 40 to 50 years, we've really focused on economics education as sort of mathematical models rather than really comparing our economic system to the real world and thinking about it as a, you know, a complex dynamic system, much like an ecosystem or a climate system. And so we're really focused on getting underneath the policy, focusing on narrative, focusing on the design of the institutions within the economy, and the design of companies.
I was just more focusing on the fact that there's a big debate about the nature of funding you give, or philanthropic organizations give. And I suppose, you know, there's two extremes. One is where you give something with specific activities to be done, with very tightly sort of project-based funding with very, very tight specification, versus at the other end of the stream, core funding, where you support the broad objectives, knowing that exactly what needs to be done at any time is probably better left to the organization in question, who is immediately dealing with the complex system change and so on. So that I was more thinking that, you know, I think there's a debate that's, you know, a position that suggests that if you're into systems change, you really should be giving core funding rather than project funding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. There is a debate about that, and when you are doing systems change, it does make a lot more sense to actually give organizations core funding. For us, it also makes sense to fund networks, because then you're funding an organization that's connected with many other groups, and so we believe more change happens if you fund lots of networks and network them together. And you know, I think it's an interesting question, because the funders, particularly in the United States, over the past 40 to 50 years, who have focused on the economy, have on the right, so those who are more conservative, who have really brought neoliberalism to the fore, have done exactly what you're suggesting. They've been enormously successful at funding organizations with core support and letting them go and do their thing and learn as they're applying their strategies. Whereas the more liberal, the less conservative funders have really focused on very specific goals and outcomes within each of their grants, have often not provided operating support, and I think they haven't been as successful, which is part of the reason why we're in the multiplying crises that we're in, because they just haven't been able to see the whole. They've been focusing on each of the little different pieces.
Yeah, no, that is a really interesting comparison, isn't it? So we've got a question here, which is, which initiative have you funded makes you most excited? And I might invite, while you think about an answer, I'm going to invite David to join us. You can just put your camera on and your microphone.
Hi, David. So which grant has made us the happiest, or which ones do it really resonates with us? Yeah. I actually asked my board of directors this question at the end of last year, and they came up with 2 grants. I think you will hear from one person tomorrow, but the grant that they chose that they liked the most was actually the one that we gave to this program of the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Within the OECD is a program called New Approaches to Economic Challenges, which is directed by William Hines, who you'll hear from tomorrow. And, 5 years ago, when I started Partners for a New Economy, and anybody told me that we'd be funding the OECD, which to me seemed like a very conservative organization that was it's in that power structure that holds neoliberalism in place, I would have said, no way, never. But NIAC is actually a really radical entity within the OECD, and really has pushed forward this idea of the economic system as much like an ecosystem that we need to understand in terms of its relationship to the environment, human culture, human behavior, and think of it as a complex, dynamic ecosystem. And they've really done a great job at helping economists understand those concepts and start to put them in place in policy in each of their countries. So that was my board's favorite grant. I don't think I really have a favorite one. One of their other ones was this joint grant that we gave to, you can cut me off if you want, because I could probably talk forever, that they gave to a group of organizations. So the Council on Economic Policies in Switzerland, the University College London's Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose, and the New Economics Foundation in the UK, to both play an inside-outside game with central banks to get them to incorporate environmental sustainability into their mandate. And their mandate, as you may know, is really financial stability. That's their job. How do we maintain financial stability? And this grant has been enormously successful in Europe, not so much in the United States, and in some other countries, in helping central banks get to the point where they recognized initially that climate change was a huge risk, both to the financial system and to their own portfolios. And so they started adopting different ways to incorporate climate change risk into their mandates, and now they're going beyond that to incorporate environmental sustainability.
It's quite interesting, Leslie, that both your examples are in the policy sphere.
I know.
Not system change.
But I will say, well, no, I think this, particularly the central bank one, is deeply systemic system change, because it's actually changing the mindsets of the central bankers. So it's not just about, doing something differently, it's like creating a new policy within central banks. It's actually helping people, up here pulling the strings of the economy, understand why climate change is important. And if you can't create that cultural shift, that mind shift, that's like, if you've ever seen Donella Meadows' example of system change with the iceberg, with just the tip of it's on top, which is where the policy happens, but then the mindset change is way down here at the bottom. that's what they've been able to do, is actually get into central banks, develop relationships with those bankers, and help them understand why what they're doing is actually quite harmful to the future of human civilization and the environment. And without that cultural shift, they won't change their policy in any significant way.
So David, what did you think of those answers? Or are you surprised?
I love everything you said and what you're doing. It brings me to one short question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I saw a video of Noam Chomsky where he said that the Occupy movement actually had a big chance of showing that things can be done differently outside of the current capitalistic system. And instead of pushing for a top-down approach, he argued they should have funded this big factory that was going to close down and make it into like a corporation. Mm-hmm. Are there any grassroots initiatives that basically show there is a different way possible that you have been funding lately?
Mm-hmm. We don't do a huge amount of grassroots funding. One of the organizations that we do fund that is more of an advocacy group is Positive Money in the UK and Europe. And I think so they also, just within their organization, play kind of an inside-outside game. So they do research and share it with monetary policy people, but they also really activate people on the ground to ask for changes within monetary policy. And that's been very effective. We do fund a couple of think tanks in the United States, which have very close relationships with the activist community. And so they do research and sort of translation of new economic thinking and get it into the hands of grassroots activists who can then take it to policymakers or use it to educate their communities or their states or whoever they're trying to influence. And that's been really successful at both, I think, uniting both the environmental communities and the communities who are focused on racial and gender equality in the United States and economic equality. It's really helped to bring them together. Before we started funding these think tanks, I think the environmental community and the justice communities sort of were coming to these issues with a different frame, with different frames of mind that made it really hard for them to work together. So by funding the think tanks and their translation of economic theory, they've really helped unite these communities.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, David. Can you switch off your yourself? Just there's two quick technical questions to end with. How can organizations apply for a grant? Do you require your grantees to submit something like accomplishment or progress reports?
Yes. So we don't take unsolicited proposals. So we don't have an application online or anything, but we are really happy to talk to anybody. And once we have a conversation with you and decide whether or not your organization or your project would be a good fit with us, if we do decide that, then we'll send you an application. So the way to contact us is basically send us an email. And so I'll give you the email of our program associate, a woman named Ana Luisa Behrens.
It's on your website, because people can find a link to your website.
So our website is www.p.org, and her email address is actually not on our website. So I'll tell you what it is.
The chat, type chat
thing.
That'd be probably easiest. And just on the question of the chat is.
Oh,
Yeah.
here it is. It's at the top.
Do you require any grantees to submit something like accomplishment or progress report? Yeah.
Yes. We require everybody to submit an annual report. And if you get a grant from us, we will schedule somewhat regular phone calls with you just for an update. We love it when you send us newsletters or, just a little summary of what's happening, or, we just want to make sure that we know what's going on.
Well, we'll have to end there because we have to have time for the others. There was another question which we've missed, but hopefully if you have time to sort of hang around and chat, that was about historical wrongs, which is a huge topic. So thank you very much, Leslie. And I will now press a button and you will leave the stage. Cheers,
Okay.
Bye.
That's easy.